You're still streaming the hotspot, and every June, Guam celebrates the sacrifices and stories of Chamorro War survivors. This commemoration is often highlighted by activities organized by the Guam War Survivors Memorial Foundation, especially their Sentimental Journey concert series. You know, and you've seen it online for many, many years now. During a special Fanatsu podcast, members of the foundation board discussed the upcoming Guam PBS special Sentimental Journey 5, a Chamorro symphony, premiering on June 28th on KGTVS Channel 12, and also here on KUM. And joining me now is Dr. Michael Bevacqua, who is the podcast host. Doc,
half a day.
Half a day. Good to see you after so long.
I'll go look at you too. It's good to be back in KUM.
Absolutely. You got a nice fresh look. I was going to say, somebody got a haircut.
Well, KUM got an upgrade too, I
Thank you.
I can smell the wood from the set. It's nice.
Not if it would, because I don't know if that would actually stand as well as this does. But we're glad we got your stamp of approval. Even more so, your stamp of approval goes on Sentimental Journey 5.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean,
this one has particular meaning to our people.
Oh, it does. So if you're not familiar with the Sentimental Journey series, it's music from the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s that our Manamku listened to. But this one is different because it's a Chamorro symphony. So it's really focused on Chamorro music, like old school Chamorro music, like even before Johnny Sablan, Jimmy D, J.D. Crutch. And so they're highlighting Chamorro music from back in the day, and then highlighting some Chamorro musicians too. So for example, part of this symphony we'll talk about, they called him Tun Pete Sabodzas, Pete Rosario, who is known for writing the Sam, Sam, My Dear Uncle Sam song.
Of course.
And so most of us know that song, we've heard it. And then I know that for this special, they'll be talking about the history of Tun Pete, but also musician Rachel Esteves will be performing an updated version of the song, sort of like bringing it to new life for a new generation.
Yeah, so I mean, those of us were roughly the same age, and we grew up singing that. It was taught to us when Chamorro class was still mandated. Bring that back, please, everybody. Everyone needs to speak our indigenous tongue. And the meaning has not been lost on our generation, everything. But through your work, down at the Guam Museum and through the Chamorro War survivors, they're passing those lessons, that wisdom, that knowledge onto our children.
Oh, it's so important because I think, when people talk to me a lot about, the culture change, identity is different, and I'm like, well, families spend less time together because, your average child probably knows more about the Minecraft world than the world of their grandparents.
They're praying at the altar of Instagram.
Exactly. And so what we need to do then is not just lament it, but we need to try to fill the gaps. So if we find that the next generation isn't learning these stories, isn't hearing them, well, let's create more opportunities for them to hear them. And so the Guam War Survivors Memorial Foundation Board has done that with the concert series, the in-person concert series. I mean, that was always wonderful when they would have it, and you'd see great-grandparents and great-grandchildren kind of at the table listening to music and talking story and stuff like that. And then even in COVID, they've done the specials on TV, streaming online, and it's just this great opportunity to sort of, before we lose our war survivors, before they're just sort of faces in old photographs or names on memorial walls, let's spend some time with them. Let's hear their stories. Let's document them as humans. Not just sort of statistics, not just names on a wall, but let's sort of humanize them before they leave us.
This is my Nana's generation too. So she would sit myself and all my cousins down and just say, look, this is what I went through. This is what my siblings and I went through. These are not easy stories to hear, but you have to know this because this is part of our history. But this is also the respect that speaking of mandating, this is the respect that I expect you to have for your neighbors, for the people that came before you, for the people that come after you.
Hungan, absolutely. I mean, I always tell my kids and young people, I'm like, the worst thing that you've ever been through, not even a super typhoon, maybe you went one day without internet in the house, or 2 days without aircon in the house. But our grandparents, our great-grandparents, 32 months of occupation by the Japanese, seeing family beaten, some seeing people executed, seeing Hagatnya destroyed, turned to rubble, seeing so much. And so it's important for us to have that perspective.
Kids robbed of their youth, of their...
Oh, exactly. I mean, at the Guam Museum, we had the Garcia family dropped off last week 2 GW high school yearbooks from 1949. from their parents, their
Wow.
mother and father, who were both, they were likely sophomores that year. And they dropped them off, and their parents were several years apart in age, but they were in the same class because the war just threw off all the educational stuff. So you had people in their 20s who were still going to high school because the war had set them back so far. And anyways, it's one of the great things working at the museum is they brought in these yearbooks, and both of these two left messages for each other in them. And they got married a few years later. So it's great to have the yearbooks and the story.
Well, I'll tell you what, you actually go into great detail in about everything that's happening with the Guam Symphony. In this clip we're going to play now from that's on the KUM Podcast Network. This is the latest episode of your Fanatsu podcast. So, Joe, sir, if you would, please, this is Dr. Michael Bevacqua talking about the upcoming event.
With that in mind, let's take a minute. The Guam War Survivors Memorial Foundation reminds us na para este na mes, sinato honra y mañanata todo tiempo gitori bedata, lo especialmente este na mes, junio, para este. And so they offer us 5 things that we can do for War Survivor Remembrance Day and during this month. And Señor taita este quintusi umeega potencia.
Wonderful. In honor of our War Survivor Remembrance Day, we are suggesting these ways that we can honor our survivors. Here's 5 points that we can do. Number 1, offer a prayer for our island's greatest generation and all that they endured. Second is to find the name of your loved one at the Asan Bay Overlook Memorial Wall. That's a wonderful way to go up and try and find your grandparents.
All right, thank you so much again, Doc. Real quick, got time for one more question. What is the emotional impact that people will take away? I mean, it's literally going to wash over them when they hear this music, when they get the message, they let the lyrics really affect them and everything like that. But what is going to be the lasting impact of this?
Oh, as we lose the greatest generation, sort of our imanamkota, our elders, our war survivors, it's important that we understand that sort of our role here is to listen, but also to then pass on, sort of to keep telling the stories, right? Because, you know, you talked about sitting and listening to your nana, you know, sitting and listening to our elders. Soon we will be the ones who will have to tell the stories about our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our parents. And so these types of specials get you in that mindset. They take you back in time, but then they also at the same time give you the gift. These are the stories of your elders. It's now your responsibility to pass them on.
Absolutely, and that's a responsibility which each of us happily take up. So, Doc, always a pleasure to see you.
Hagolokwi.
Okay, hagumas. Now, don't miss the premiere of Sentimental Journey 5, a Tomorrow Symphony. That is going to be right here on KUM TV8 at 11 a.m., TV 11 at 3 p.m., and KGTF Channel 12 at 8 p.m. You can catch it throughout the month of July. On TV8, it's going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3:30 in the afternoon, and TV 11 starting at 4, at Saturdays also at 4 in the afternoon. All right, you want to hang out? We're going to end the show right after this, but hey, kick back with me for a few minutes. All right, so just want to see. Okay, I'm going to go have a conversation with Dr. Stay tuned because we will be back with more Hotspot right after this.